Toronto, y'all make some motherfucking noise. I've been on tour with this guy. This is like actually one of my real friends. On October 22nd, he's got an incredible album coming out, and we got a joint on there that's so hard, I swear. Shout out to Drizzy, motherfucking Drake.
A lot of people forget out here, even though we're doing these collaborations and stuff like that, at the same time, this is still rap. This is still competitive. And I'm trying to compete with everybody, you know, to be the best. And that's how I feel, you know, everybody else should think about it.
What a rapper with a ghostwriter. Tell me what happened to you. Oh, I swore I wouldn't tell. I wouldn't tell. I wouldn't tell. I wouldn't tell. I wouldn't tell.
Lawbreeze and Gentlegrams. In today's episode of Lawbree in Gentleland, the phony Montana fraud of Spotify who was handed a homicide on a song where Dot said they're not alike might have been exposed for rhymes he did not write, way back when Lil Wayne still had the hottest mic. 2011 is when Kendrick may have discovered deep deception, that there were separate penmanship in Champagne Poofy's hits, and this might have caused the initial rift, the secret that was just exposed. So let's peel the curtains back that were forever closed. But first, bounce on the like and subscribe buttons with your nose.
I study
Rapaholics
for a living.
Now, Lawbreeze and Gentlegrams, I want to take you guys back to my favorite timeline. A time when some of you guys might have been in diapers, some of you guys might have been parents to kids who were in diapers, and you're probably wondering what the hell is going on with this change in hip-hop. 2010. The blog era comes to fruition, new faces emerge, and the division between radio and the internet was in full effect. The two frontrunners up were Drake and J. Cole. Drake was dropping so many hits to the point where Jay-Z, who had just signed a young J. Cole, approached both Drake and J. Cole at a party and basically begged Lawbree to give Cole a hit. Meanwhile, Glasses Malone was in the second inning of his career and signed to the same label as Drake, Cash Money. That's going to play an important role in this story very shortly, but on a side note, G Malone had secured by far my favorite Wayne feature verse of all time with his song Haters.
Oh, Lil Wayne's just too good. Oh, Lil Wayne's just too good.
If somehow Glasses Malone is watching this, can you please explain to the world how you got Wayne to tap into the pocket he was on that verse? I looked everywhere online, I couldn't find a single interview where Glasses Malone was discussing this, but he did discuss something recently that'll play a very important role in this story very shortly. But before we get to that, we gotta get to another important aspect of this time period. December 2009, a young Kendrick Lamar had just changed his stage name from K-Dot to Kendrick Lamar, releasing his self-titled project, Kendrick Lamar. And on that track list, Kendrick Lamar had a track called Determined, where he professed his determination and predicted where he would end up in the very near future. And that song had some interesting lines on it. On the first verse, Kendrick is depicting where he's at in life at that period of time, and he even name drops J. Cole. He asks some important questions, rapping, "What do I gotta do in order to see success? Having the world's best to call me the best. Pull up at the Grammys as the best dressed with an address linked to a beautiful actress. $1 and a dream. I feel like J. Cole." So you can tell where Kendrick was at right here, right? Nowhere near where he wanted to be financially. He hadn't come close to attaining the praise and recognition that he wanted for himself, or even that his peers had had by this point in time. J. Cole was already signed to Jay-Z, Drake was already signed to Wayne, and had several hits under his belt. And that's where the third verse of this song gets interesting. Kendrick rapped, "Welcome to the story of my life. As you're listening to KDOT, man, me and my girl split the bucket at KFC. She's listening to Drake. And all I could say is, damn, these guys that much better than me? I don't think this is meant to be because I'm always losing self-esteem." She paused the iPhone, then said, "Huh?" I repeated what I said, and then she replied, "Shut up. You know you're the best, boy. You gotta keep doing it. But don't forget when you do, just keep you in it. And never listen to what the industry say. Don't be a typical artist. Be more like Jay."
Spicy.
And this would foreshadow a lot of what we would see in the later years between Kendrick Lamar, Drake, and J. Cole. While Kendrick here is painting a picture of him sitting with his girl, feeling insecure, like his career may not reach the heights that he was hoping for, she's there not even listening to him, listening to Drake, another artist his age, who just came in the game but at the time had accomplished so much more. And his girl reassures him, "You're gonna be the greatest, don't worry about that, just stay true to who you are. Don't fall victim to the industry." And Kendrick wouldn't. He would do things his way. But that did mean that his come up would be a little slower than those two guys that he mentioned on this record, J. Cole, and Drake. Drake gets his debut album, Thank Me Later, out by mid-2010. He's got the rap hits, the pop hits, the R&B hits. It sells 400K in the first week. It's a smash. But it does feel a little forced in terms of chasing something that could stick on radio, having those pop hooks, subject matter being a little bit watered down. Drake would later say that that was due to the pressure that he felt by his label, and that'll play an important role pretty shortly. Meanwhile, J. Cole is feeling the same pressure from his label. They keep pushing back his debut because he doesn't have a big hit single that could resonate with radio. Again, they don't truly understand how to necessarily market these blog era rappers at this point in time, because a Drake, a J. Cole, Kendrick, Wale, whoever from the blog era, they're developing most of their core fans off of the internet. But the label doesn't know if that's going to translate into concert ticket sales, into album sales, into radio spins, because the radio works very different, right? Like, your songs start getting played more and more on the radio when people either request your song to be played, or when it is played, they don't turn the radio off. And that's why I used to hear so many familiar voices on the radio constantly. Pitbull, Rihanna, Flo Rida, Chris Brown, Lady Gaga, Beyonce, they were on the radio constantly because people who were just driving around casually, they would hear a song by these artists come on and they already recognize the voice.
I study
Flo Rida
for a living.
It'd be different if you heard a random Kendrick Lamar song if you didn't know who he was, right? It kind of broke the pattern a little bit. Meanwhile, on the internet, your kind of objective when you're searching for music is to find new things, new sounds. So my point is, the label didn't know how those two mediums, the internet and the radio, would coincide, and therefore didn't know how to market these artists who built up any buzz and traction that they already had all on the internet. But Kendrick Lamar took a different approach. While Drake and J. Cole built their clout up through free mixtapes and then later on hit records tailored for radio, Kendrick stuck to the advice or the mentality that he had on that Determined song from 2009. You gotta keep doing it, but don't forget when you do, just keep you in it and never listen to what the industry say. Don't be a typical artist. So he didn't go the typical route. Now, shout out to Jeremy Heck, because he's been doing an amazing job covering year by year the progress of the careers amongst the big three. I highly suggest you guys go check out his videos. But he brought up an interesting point, because you know how everyone always asks, right? Like, what is Kendrick Lamar's official debut album? Is it Good Kid, Mad City, or is it Section 80? Because Section 80 was, you know, officially released onto iTunes. You had to buy it. You couldn't just download it like a free mixtape, but it was an independent release. It didn't have a big single behind it. It didn't have that major label push. Well, Jeremy found a clip from an old Kendrick interview where he explains what Section 80 truly was, and I think we can actually finally put that debate to rest and conclude that this was not his debut album.
What's next for you as a solo artist? What's the next project?
It's the debut album.
The official debut album.
The official debut album. When I went into Section 80, I wanted that to be a solidify as a warm-up for what I really am about to do.
That's a hell of a warm-up, son.
Once the debut come out, everybody can get the whole collection and really know who Kendrick Lamar is.
So I bring this up to say Kendrick Lamar took a much different approach when introducing himself to the game. He went full force, leveraging the internet to slowly build up buzz online that derived from people discovering this fantastic project in Section 80. Something that wasn't fully a mixtape or an official debut. It was just this phenomenal project that lived on the internet. And slowly but surely, even though it wasn't a breakout success, only selling around 5,000 copies in the first week, it would launch Kendrick Lamar into becoming hip-hop's next golden child. He would get passed the torch from legends like Snoop Dogg, The Game, all on stage at his concert at the House of Blues. And very ironically, if you want to know the first major artist who ever heard Section 80 before the world did, it was none other than La Brianna. Kendrick had said in a 2011 interview, Drake reached out, I want to say after I dropped Section 80. He was actually the first person to hear Section 80. I gave it to him that night. The first night we met. He was catching a flight somewhere and I sent it to him through email, and he was just rocking out with it for a minute, really bigging me up on the project, telling me to keep doing what I'm doing and that it's amazing. Probably a week after it dropped, he said, I want to get you on my album. The first time he told me, he said he was going to send me a song with The Weeknd, but I don't know if that song actually made the album. And after that, a few more conversations, he finally sent me an instrumental and told me to do what I wanted to do on it. Now, on a side note, it would be absolutely crazy to know that there's a song that exists with Take Care era Drake, House of Balloons era Weeknd, and a young Kendrick Lamar right before Good Kid, Mad City, all in the same song together. That's a video for another day, but why this is important is because this is around the time when Kendrick Lamar meets Drake. 616 in Toronto? Yeah, they met backstage at a Kendrick Lamar show on June 16th, 2011 in Toronto, Drake's hometown. Kendrick had spoke on it, saying, "I did a show in Toronto on June 16th, my first show there. I think it was the same night we were going back to the hotel and Drake hit my phone. We met up, chilled, got to vibe, see where each other was at and stuff. That's a real good dude. He's got a genuine soul. We clicked immediately." And now we know this would also be the same night Kendrick sends Drake Section 80, which would drop to the world a month later. And once it drops, Drake asks Kendrick to hop on Take Care. We don't get that Weeknd collab, but we do get an interlude performed solely by Kendrick Lamar. Buried Alive. Now this song's very important because remember on that 2009 song Determined, how Kendrick was saying he felt discouraged that his girl was listening to Drake over his own music, and she tells him, just keep going, you're gonna be great, just don't let the industry consume you. Stay true to who you are. On Buried Alive, he reflects on those same themes, but now it's from a different perspective. It's from a good kid in a mad industry who just got a slight taste of fame, got passed the torch by West Coast legends. He's backstage with Drake in Toronto and looking at how a guy his age is living in almost a completely different universe than Kendrick is.
Spicy.
Both of them are chasing the same goal. Both of them want the exact same things in being notoried, if that's a word. That's not a word, but you know what I mean. Like having the notoriety of being the best rapper of their generation, having a flourishing career. They're on the exact same journey, but at such different points, and both of them with such a different perspective. Drake and 40 pop out in a Maybach. Drake, again, is a multi-platinum artist at this point. Him and Kendrick are discussing how the women are the tastemakers for the music they make, right? Like, if you can't cross over to making content that also appeals to people of the opposite gender, it's hard to fully reach a universal audience. And ultimately, the Buried Alive interlude reflects Kendrick's feelings of sudden fame and the pressure of entering Drake's world after meeting him. The Buried Alive metaphor represents being trapped by success, getting everything he wanted but feeling overwhelmed by the expectations and the industry politics. There's a deep inner conflict within Kendrick at this point who hadn't fully crossed over to that level of superstardom that Drake was on just yet, and he's kind of looking at Drake as a reference point, them being the same age, and analyzing how he himself wants to balance artistic integrity and fame. And I think this song would definitely foreshadow both artists' future creative and competitive tension, since the song can be interpreted as Kendrick realizing that Drake's lifestyle wasn't what he wanted for himself. But what I don't think he realized at this point in time is that they weren't even competing for the same thing. They were not on the same playing field. And I don't mean that to discredit Kendrick Lamar. I say that to say, like Kendrick rapped on that Determined record in 2009, never listen to what the industry say. Don't be a typical artist. Be more like Jay. Kendrick wanted to be the greatest rapper. What he didn't realize is that Drake was on a mission to be the biggest pop star, and Take Care would help him get one step closer to that. And with that, he was gearing up to go on his biggest tour to date, Club Paradise, where he'd bring a bunch of faces from the next generation on stage with him. Meek Mill, 2 Chainz, A$AP Rocky, French Montana, Waka Flocka Flame, Miguel, J. Cole, and a young Kendrick Lamar. Kendrick Lamar was on the North American leg of this tour, which spanned from May until June of 2012. And what's ironic is the last date of this tour would be June 17th, 2012. 1 year and 1 day after Drake and Kendrick met for the first time. 6/16. So now Kendrick wasn't just collaborating with Drake, he was getting a direct view at how Drake operated as a business behind the scenes. And as a human, right? How he navigated fame. What was his recording process like? What was his daily routine like? Was he partying after every single show? Was he digging a shovel full of money, power, fame, and burying himself alive?
But you know they love to sue.
Whatever Kendrick Lamar saw behind the scenes on that tour definitely reshaped how he viewed Drake going forward, and maybe even how he approached his own craft, because just a couple months later, he would reach full superstardom territory when he dropped Good Kid, Mad City. Pretty much right off the rip, this album took over the world, and even faster than J. Cole, Kendrick quickly became Drake's fiercest competition. But of course, we also can't forget they collaborated on the project. Poetic Justice. Now I know there's this massive theory floating around about Kendrick potentially writing Drake's verse on Poetic Justice and having Drake diss himself on the song through Kendrick's bars that he wrote for Drake. And shout out to the guy who created the theory, Anthony Imbranone. Sorry for mispronouncing your last name. The theory will play an important role in this story very shortly. But spoiler alert, and again, all respect to the research and perspective of Anthony, I just personally don't believe this theory to be true, alright? And there's a couple reasons. I could be wrong, he could be wrong. We'll go more into detail on the theory later in this video, but ultimately the main reason why I don't necessarily think Kendrick Lamar wrote this verse for Drake is because while he was shooting a music video for the song, he actually spoke on the creation of it, saying, "My vibe with Drake is real cool. This track was really just bringing out the best of pulling pure honesty on a track. We're talking about specific people. That's something he's great at and something I figure myself at being great at. You know, just telling the story." And guys, I mean, aside from Kendrick Lamar himself saying that both him and Drake were writing stories about specific people in their own lives, maybe I'm misinterpreting that quote, but I mean, you can't really misinterpret this quote. This is a direct bar from Drake's verse in that song. "I write poems in these songs dedicated to the fun sex, your natural hair and your soft skin and your big butt in that sundress. Good God, what you doing that walk for? When I see that thing move, I just wish that we would fight less and we would talk more." I just can't see Kendrick Lamar writing that, guys. I'm sorry. Okay, update. I've been going down a bit of a rabbit hole as I'm recording this video. And there's one interview where Kendrick, Punch from TDE, and Mixed by Ali were all talking about the different records on Good Kid, Mad City. And when they speak on Poetic Justice, I mean, obviously it's a concept record, but the way they detail integrating Drake into it, something's a little fishy here. So this is what Kendrick Lamar had to say about the song. "If you listen to Poetic Justice, it's a song about a chick saying these legs are poems. On the back end of that, it's really the Shireen joint. So it's a dedication song for Shireen. And that's going into Good Kid and Mad City, which completes the story. Me and Drake had been working for a while off the fact that I was on his tour and I was on Take Care. We were talking about what joints we wanted to do. When Scoop shot me the track, that's the producer, I immediately came up with the concept of doing that vibe, and the first person I had in mind was Drake. Drake killed it and it came out crazy. I think that's gonna sit for a while." So Kendrick's already talking like the concept of the song was in full fruition, and then he had the idea of just sending it off to Drake, right? Once the concept was complete. That could mean Drake added his own perspective to the concept, or he was just a measly actor within this concept that Kendrick had already concocted. Now, listen to what Punch and Mixed Ali had to say. "We started recording that a while before he actually laid the vocals. I think when he says he's talking about Drake. That was probably one of the more difficult records because we knew people would love that record and it could be a smash, so it took a while before we could get the right approach. We were in New York and Kendrick did the first verse and the hook. When we got back to LA, he finished the song. Then he rearranged it. Then we put Drake on it. It took months to get that song finished." So Kendrick finished the song and then rearranged it and then you put Drake on it? So what was Drake's role here, right? Anyways, he continues. "We're definitely not using Drake just because he's Drake. The song sounds like Drake. It sounds like his lane. We're definitely not forcing him on it at all. That's how Kendrick works. If it fits the song, then it's whatever. But just because you're a superstar doesn't mean you're right for this record. So it was a conscious decision to get Drake for that song." And then Ali said, "We were playing songs for Drake and Kendrick just knew he wanted to get him on there. Drake and OVO, all of them are like family. So as soon as they heard that, it was all love. As soon as we sent them the song, Drake sent it right back. Everything we are doing is organic and we have to make it feel that way throughout the record. So if Drake is on there, it's because Kendrick felt his voice needed to be on there." So I don't know, guys. Let me know in the comments. I'm stuck in between. Was this a concept Kendrick had fully fledged and just sent it to Drake as maybe a reference track that Drake just laid down the vocals on? Or did he send it with a blank verse for Drake to add his own contributions to Kendrick's already full-fledged vision? Regardless of what it is, what we do know is that this wasn't a song they actually recorded together. This was something that Kendrick had concocted and then sent Drake on his own timing. The two would also collaborate on A$AP Rocky's song Effin' Problems, which was originally a Drake and 2 Chainz record that Drake wanted to give Kendrick Lamar for Good Kid, Mad City, but Kendrick didn't feel like it fit the concept of the album. And Kendrick would actually even bring Drake out at one of his concerts in September of 2012, right before Good Kid, Mad City came out, and it seemed like Poetic Justice had already been done by then because Drake is actually talking about it when he's on stage with Kendrick.
Toronto, y'all make some motherfucking noise. I'm gonna let you know, I've been enjoying the out of this shit, man. I can still taste the Hennessy in my mouth from last night, and I already had 2 tonight, so I'm in there tonight feeling wavy. But I want to let you know, I've been on tour with this guy. This is like actually one of my real friends. You meet a lot of people in the business. This is one of my real friends, and I swear almost every single night, all this would ever tell me is, I love Toronto, so y'all make some noise for Kendrick. And I'm gonna let you know that on October 22nd, he's got an incredible album coming out, and we got a joint on there that's so hard, I swear. love. Shout out to Drizzy, motherfucking Drake holding us down.
Now, somewhere around this timeline is when things would take somewhat of a left turn. Kendrick, again with Good Kid, Mad City, would quickly become the biggest rapper next to Drake within this generation, and MTV would actually crown him the hottest MC of 2013. J. Cole wasn't on that list, and Drake was below Kendrick. Drake and J. Cole, they didn't like that too much. Drake, about a day or two after the list came out, he dropped 5 a.m. in Toronto where he rapped, "F your list, I made Forbes list, everything's looking gorgeous." And then him and J. Cole in that summer dropped Jodeci Freestyle where Drake rapped, "Please stop arguing about who's the best MC, I'm sure they all could agree, you're not."
That list. It's very important for hip-hop. I love it. I love that they have debates like that. We need that. It's competitive. A lot of people forget out here, even though we're doing these collaborations and stuff like that, at the same time, this is still rap. It's still competitive. And I'm trying to compete with everybody, to be the best. And that's how I feel, everybody else should think about it, So when people feel like they need to make their comments, I feel that's needed. You're supposed to feel like you're the best. Because if you don't, you're going to get stepped on. Because it's a jungle out there. You feel me?
Then, of course, a month after this, Kendrick would drop Control. And I believe it was Drake's reaction to Control that would completely alter the trajectory of their collaborative and personal relationship. Drake didn't understand the sentiment behind it. He was crying in interviews about how he saw Kendrick the next day at the VMA Awards and, they dapped it up like everything was all good. But it couldn't have been all good because those were very harsh words on Control. And I think the comment that stung the most is that, again, this is a time where we're going through a bit of a transition. We're going from the radio era to the internet era. And around this time period, it was still very conventional for artists who were promoting a new project to go up to radio and do these interviews where they sit down with real journalists who ask them real questions on the spot about the current state of the culture. So Drake, in promotion for his Nothing Was the Same album, which came out about a month after Control, couldn't dodge the smoke when he kept getting asked about that verse, because that's what everyone was talking about at the time. Elliott Wilson had asked him what he thought about it, and what Drake said stood out here, because remember how I said earlier in this video when Kendrick was reflecting on where him and Drake were at in their lives on Buried Alive, how they were both kind of chasing, the same thing, they were on the same path, but I said they weren't on the same path because Drake was trying to become a pop star, Kendrick was trying to become the best MC. I don't think that was ever more poignant than in Drake's response to Control when sitting down with Elliott Wilson, where he explained that Kendrick is not his competition. That verse is not a threat to Drake because the sentiment behind it, Kendrick's intention behind it, does not align with the mission that Drake was on. Drake did not view Kendrick as competition. He said this word for word. His competition in his eyes was Kanye West, someone who was constantly thinking about the future and how to create the next groundbreaking piece of art. That's where Drake wanted to be.
He's the new guy to love, and of course, rightfully so. He's super talented, I remember somebody asking me, is Kendrick Lamar your biggest competition in this generation or whatever? Yeah. And I think that Kendrick has the utmost potential, man. When it comes to competition, I'm more worried about consistency. I'm more worried about bodies of work. I'm basically talking about there's one guy who's up every night thinking about how to get better and how to do things bigger, and that's Kanye West.
And I think beyond any criticism Drake had of that Control verse, this must have been what ruffled feathers the most. Because what you're basically saying here is that, yeah, we're playing the same sport, but Kendrick Lamar is not on my skill level, right? I'm building something much bigger. But the added layer that makes this comment sting even more is that what if Kendrick knew this entire time that Drake was using ghostwriters? What if Kendrick really was one of those ghostwriters? You're both striving to be the best MC, right? Kendrick is awarded that by MTV. You go on and subliminally diss him, say F your list, we know that you're not the best MC. Then you come out when he tries to address the competition on Control, listing you amongst the artists that he feels like he wants to take the crown from. And your response to that is, Kendrick is not my competition. Meanwhile, you're playing the same sport as him, but technically, as an MC, you're cheating.
I study
cheating
for a living.
So how do you think after all we reviewed, this entire timeline, Kendrick Lamar is looking at this when he comes in the game on record in 2009 saying he's insecure about his girl listening to Drake over him, but she tells him, you're going to be the best, just stay true to yourself, don't let the industry consume you. He meets Drake 2 years later, kind of questions who he is or what he wants out of this industry, gets sucked into the belly of the beast of the industry on a massive tour with Drake himself, dominates the industry with his debut album. Yes, we're putting it to rest. Good Kid, Mad City is the debut. After that, he comes back. He's no longer talking about, damn, Drake is that much better than me like he was in 2009. Now he's saying, I got love for you all, but I'm trying to murder you. He's still keeping Drake within that same conversation, putting him in the same bracket as Kendrick is in. He's just saying, we're playing the same sport, but I'm trying to play it better than you. All the while, this is a guy who, again, like I said before, got to the top of the game a lot faster than Kendrick Lamar did, had the hits on a magnitude Kendrick hadn't seen until years later, is talking like he's leagues beyond Kendrick Lamar. That's not his real competition, but all the while, he's out here cheating the game. Kendrick obviously wasn't a fan of this because the two would go on to trade a bunch of subliminals for the next decade until obviously it capitulated in the battle in 2024. But what's interesting is a shot that Kendrick threw in 2015 that we only really knew was a shot aimed at Drake a couple months later came on King Kunta from To Pimp a Butterfly, where of course Kendrick rapped, I can dig rapping, but a rapper with a ghostwriter, what the F happened? I swore I wouldn't tell, but most of y'all sharing bars like you got a bottom bunk in a two-man cell.
What a rapper with a ghostwriter? Tell me what happened to you.
Basically implying this is a secret he's been holding on to for a while at this point. How long could it have been? Well, that's what we gotta unpack. Could it have really been way back during the Club Paradise tour when Kendrick and Drake were out on road, recording together, performing together, etc.? You gotta also think, when he's rapping on King Kunta, he sounds disgusted by what the game has become in terms of rappers being able to use these cheat codes, right? What the F happened? It's almost like someone who's contained the secret for so long, but has watched what the game has evolved into and is just fed up with it. And ultimately, the world only discovered that Drake was using ghostwriters by around 2015 when Meek Mill had exposed that Quentin Miller had written a large chunk of the records off of If You're Reading This Is Too Late. But of course, this was an industry secret for months, if not years, before Meek Mill had blown the whistle. If you guys watch my Quentin Miller documentary, then you know that Meek Mill had actually requested Quentin Miller to write for him. And him, along with DJ Drama, and likely many other heavy hitters within the industry, were well aware that Drake had been working with Quentin Miller for a long time.
My man thought he was getting dissed. But the line, to me, your girl of your dream is really not a challenge or whatever. I said, bro, he's not dissing you. But those weren't technically his bars.
Also, think about when King Kunta came out, right? This was early 2015. About a month after If You're Reading This Is Too Late came out, which was riddled with writing credits for Quentin Miller. It's just that the world didn't know. I mean, have you guys ever gone through the writing credits of someone's album to make sure that that person really wrote all their raps? You gotta remember, Kendrick is looking at this guy as his competition. But at some point, he realizes they're not even playing the same game. Which begs the question, why did Kendrick mention Drake on Control? In an interview, Kendrick had said, I call myself the best rapper. I can't call myself the best rapper if I have a ghostwriter. If you're saying you're a different type of artist and you don't really care about the art form of being the best rapper, then so be it. Make great music. But the title, it won't be there. Now do you see why when Kendrick did give Drake that title of being a great rapper on that Control verse, mentioning him within the other rappers he name dropped, for Drake to then go on and say that Kendrick is not his competition, that he doesn't have the same title that Drake has, that could make Kendrick look at this whole game sideways? Well, what if he knew all along? Scratch the what if. Glasses Malone pretty much confirms to us that Kendrick Lamar has known pretty much since right around the time he met Drake that Drake uses ghostwriters. Remember I said Glasses Malone was signed to Cash Money right around the same time that Drake had just struck his deal with Young Money, Cash Money. Glasses Malone had also come up very close to the TDE camp and Kendrick Lamar. Kendrick even shouted him out during his Grammy speech.
All the West Coast artists, man, early on, G Malone.
So I say that to say this is not someone who's going to go make up stories for the sake of it, right? He's had first-hand perspective into the careers of both Drake and Kendrick Lamar, seeing them both maneuver behind the scenes early on in their careers. Now, just to give some backstory, I'm sure you guys know the show, The Bigger Picture, right? Well, last week on their show, they were discussing the Poetic Justice theory. Did Kendrick Lamar really write that verse for Drake? DJ Head, while he definitely did not confirm that that theory was true, he's another individual who was very close to Glasses Malone around the time where Glasses signed to Cash Money. So he brought up a story in how Cash Money offered Glasses a Drake collaboration, and Glasses ultimately turned it down due to some things that he knew. At the time, people are thinking DJ Head here is implying that, this is his response essentially to, did Kendrick write that verse for Drake on Poetic Justice? He's basically saying like, well, I used to roll with Glasses. Glasses was signed to Cash Money, and he rejected a verse from Drake based off of things that he knew about where Drake's verses were actually being penned at, right? Basically, like, Glasses knew Drake was using a ghostwriter way back then in 2010, 2011, so he ultimately rejected the feature. But on this week's episode of the show, they actually called Glasses Malone, and he kind of clarified a couple things. Firstly, the entire story of, Glasses rejecting the feature from Drake, that had nothing to do with ghostwriting, but instead, that had to do with the fact that Drake came in the game, like a lot of us knew, as this Nickelodeon-type feature. I mean, we don't call him the Taylor Swift twin or hip-hop's Hannah Montana for no reason on this channel, right? He came into the game as an actor, but in many senses of the term, more honest than he had ever been, because he was still true to himself in terms of his subject matter, how he presented himself, the way he dressed, the way he spoke. Glasses compares him to a Nickelodeon figure, like a teen actor, right? So he was talking really tough on this hook that they wanted to present to Glasses Malone, and Glasses Malone, who actually makes tough sounding music, he was like, this doesn't fit. Not from a kid like this Nickelodeon kid.
Remember I was telling you to do a record with him?
So there was a time where, again, like,
as a journalist,
the thing about a Drake or Kendrick Lamar, like, when I first got in this business, I was just genuinely the culture. I had not studied years and years of being a rapper or making records. To both of those two artists' credit, they studied making records. Like, they're both students of the art itself. I'm a product of the culture itself. They're students of the art, and God is obviously a product of the culture. So I've always been really supportive of them. The first time I heard them play Drake music, I was just like blown away, because the person that was talking and the music that was playing, it was like you could just see it was a monster when it came to making records before I knew what a record was. So at that time, they're trying to help every artist at Cash Money. Like, Birdman takes a lot of slack, but he was trying his best to make it all work.
That's a
and
fact.
He did right by me.
That's a fact.
And as they were pushing the opportunity to work with him, the records that were being presented seemed a little bit more tough than necessarily like fitting of me. And at that time, I'm looking like, how are you gonna make it tough? I'm making the toughest records in the world. I got Crip Gang, I go shoot it in Brooklyn with 500 Crips. You could just see exactly how street I was. I got a song called I Sell Dope. Like, I'm making the hardest songs. All of these songs are hard, and him presenting me hard songs didn't feel like it would fit. So as the opportunity kept being presented, the ideas just never seemed to fit. And I was pressured by Head and Pun, like, man, you need to just keep building with dude. I'm like, it would have to be the right song. And just really, any song wasn't gonna be enough, and Head just didn't understand it at that time.
I did not.
So then Jeremy asks a really great question in that, Glasses, you're seen behind the scenes at Cash Money. You're being handed the opportunity to work with Drake. Were there rumblings at this time, 2010, 2011, that Drake was using ghostwriters? And the way Glasses responds is interesting, because after everything we just looked at, right? After the back and forth that Kendrick and Drake had on the friendship side of things, the collaborative side of things, how Kendrick went from looking at Drake like that's where he wanted to be, to getting into that position and realizing maybe this is not what I want, or I can't lose myself to this industry, to then seeing the industry games being played behind the scenes and how people were cheating the game, all that to kind of hit a boiling point by King Kunta where he says, what the F happened? Well, Glasses Malone claims that way back then when he was signed to Cash Money, in the early 2010s, before King Kunta, before the Quentin Miller debacle, it was actually Kendrick Lamar himself that told Glasses Malone that Drake has a team, that Drake is using the ghostwriters in the OVO sweatshop.
Of when people actually knew Drake had any writers. We kind of didn't say it for sure last time, but at that time, were there rumblings that you knew of within the Cash Money crew that you knew he had people working with him, or it wasn't till later that you had heard those rumors?
The first person that brought it to my attention, and I don't know if this right to snitch on him, is Dot. Dot is the first person that brought it to my attention. But I'll be honest, when he first came, it was always, we knew it was a pop approach from a pop artist. He was introduced kind of as this Nickelodeon kind of kid to the people at the label. And, talking to him, he was a well-mannered dude. But when they pressed play, you could just tell he was like a savant when it came to making records. Like, it was just nice.
Yeah.
Now that I understand what's happening, like, that would make sense. You know what I mean? Especially a lot earlier than we think. You know what I mean?
Was that 2011?
Yeah, I'm thinking it's around then. But I don't think we would have had rumbles about it, because we kind of always knew that he was a pop artist.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, not like he's a rapper, but he was a pop artist. His approach was an assembly line of how he made music that fit. Like, and he had a bunch of, he had a great team. 40 was fantastic. Boy, he wanted T-. Them dudes were like fantastic. He walked in with this team. Like, he had a plan and he executed and his plan worked.
But you knew that. Do you think Kendrick, when he said that to you, was he disappointed? Like, because basically, like, I've been studying this whole, like, was Kendrick disappointed?
Oh, hell yeah. Hell yeah. I called the a liar.
That's true. That's true. That's a fact.
I didn't quite understand what pop meant, like what pop was. Like, now I'm like, God damn it. You know what I mean? It make perfect sense. But when he first said that, I was like, hell no, man. I'm watching this dude do his thing. Like, at that time, I'm still just kind of looking at him like somebody else at the label. You know what I mean? Like, Tyga writing his own shit, Nick writing her own shit. Like, I'm thinking Cuz doing the same. And when Dot said it, remember, then I heard King Kunta. So I'm like, this is about Cuz. When it came out publicly, like when Meek kind of leaked it, and then I start asking around like all the back channel, I was like, oh, hell. You know what I mean? Which I didn't really take credit from him because, I always kind of thought of him as like a pop artist. Like, that's like being upset that you discover Madonna don't write her own songs.
I thought of it more like, yay. Like, I looked at it like,
I think Kendrick was probably upset because he was looking at Drake as his competition, which he said at that time. And he's like, I want to be the best rapper of my generation, which you are right now, because Drake was in that spot. I think he was like, damn, this is who they're looking at like that.
When he told me, I was like, hell no. I'm like, you know what I mean? But I didn't. Now, in hindsight, it all makes sense. You know what I mean? His approach is very much like Michael Jackson. He just got multiple Rod Tempertons. You know what I mean? He said it openly a million times, and none of us ever paid attention that this was his approach because we've looked at rap. Rap has been so synonymous with hip-hop over, especially Elliot, me, and our lives, bro. So everybody else that's been decent in rapping, you pretty much knew that they were kind of part of hip-hop versus now where rapping is being used with all genres. And now their own rules apply, in that genre or in that, that whole collective of how they approach making records. So he's always had this really brilliant approach at how he was going to make records, but he also understood he was taking it all from a pop perspective.
Mm-hmm.
So ultimately, I think this brings in more questions than answers, right? If Kendrick knew for all this time, how is this not something revealed throughout the battle? That was also my biggest question about that whole Poetic Justice theory, in that if that was really true, that Kendrick did write that verse and made Drake diss himself on that song, why wouldn't that be something that Kendrick revealed throughout the battle? It's not like he didn't have enough diss tracks to mention it, right? I mean, he dropped like 5 diss tracks. He could have brought that up at least one time. It's not like either of them were holding back on, sharing secrets, right? The whole daughter thing. I'm sure that's crossing a crazier line than revealing the secret of, I wrote this verse for you on a song we collaborated on. But then at the same time, Glasses Malone here is coming and saying, like, Kendrick, who we know had at the very minimum a working relationship with Drake, Mixed by Ali back in 2012, is calling Drake family. And according to Glasses, Kendrick is telling him back in 2011 that Drake has ghostwriters. But then still collaborates with him several times. Still mentions him on that Control verse amongst the other rappers who he's trying to be better than. But years later comes out and admits that if you have a ghostwriter, you can't be the best rapper. But then why mention him on Control if you knew that he had ghostwriters all along? We know that Drake even had a song tailor-made for Kendrick to hop on for his 2013 album Nothing Was the Same, which came out a month after Control dropped. And that record just never came to fruition.
Crazy. For him, where he's at, that's like, I know he's gonna murder that shit. I know he is.
Oh, but when he told me Kendrick, it just made so much sense. Oh, what was this brilliance. Oh, so good. So excited to hear that record.
So what happened there? Why did Kendrick never make it onto Nothing Was the Same? Something must have happened between October 2012, when Kendrick and Drake teamed up on Poetic Justice and Kendrick dropped Good Kid, Mad City, to around August of 2013, when Kendrick calls out Drake on that Control verse and Drake gets all butthurt about it. Could it have really all just been because Drake was just a sensitive rapper in his pajama clothes crying about that Control verse that kicked off this entire decade-long subliminal war that escalated into the biggest rap beef of all time? Or could there be something much deeper here? could Kendrick have been holding in this industry secret for years? Watching Drake become this superstar while Kendrick was still in the early phases of his career, navigating fame, realizing Drake was everything he did not want to be, and calculated this plan of attack ever since he found out Drake's secrets. Remember on Euphoria, he rapped, "The very first time I shot me a Drake, the homie told me to aim it this way. I didn't point down enough. Today, I'll show you I learned from those mistakes." Was Glasses Malone the homie that Kendrick's referencing here this entire time? The same one that Kendrick told about Drake's Ghostwriters? The secrets he swore he would never tell on King Kunta? Will these questions ever have answers? Let me know what you guys think, and I'll catch you in the next one.
I study
Rapaholics
for a living.